Okay, good morning. So, well, we are in chapter 15, which is quite long. We can divide it to three. The first part is about the borders of Nachalat Shevet Yehuda. Nachala, we translated it as inheritance, I think, meaning the place in Eretz Israel that belongs to Shevet Yehuda. This is the first part, but it's not about the Nachala itself, it's about the borders. Where are the borders? Then after that, we have two stories. One of them continues a story about Caleb from the former chapter, about Caleb and Hebron. And the second is another story about Caleb and his family, about another city in the Nachala of Shevet Yehuda. And then in the end of the chapter, which is a long part, there is a list of 112 cities that belong to Nachalat Shevet Yehuda. So there's a lot of details there. I'm not sure how we are going to explain about each verse there, but like I said before, it's important to see. So let's start from the first part, which are the borders of Shevet Yehuda. It's quite similar to the borders that are mentioned in the Torah, in the parashot that we're going to read in the next weeks. Okay, anyway, let's start. The portion that fell by lot to the various clans of the tribe of Yehuda lay farther south, down to the border of Edom, which is the wilderness of Tzin. So if you look on the map that I gave you, it starts from the east south, from the Edom. And the green line here in the low part of the story of the picture is quite the border. So before we see the details, there is a big point here. You can see two things about Nachalat Shevet Yehuda. One of them, that Nachalat Shimon is inside Nachalat Yehuda. You see, in the center of Nachalat Yehuda, you have Nachalat Shimon. That's because Shimon was swallowed by Yehuda. It became part of Yehuda. It's a point that we may talk about later. The second thing that you can see about that is the size of it. It's looked quite big. Actually, we can say that maybe almost 50% of all the land of Israel is Nachalat Shevet Yehuda. And the question is why Shevet Yehuda, the tribe of Yehuda, received such a big part in the land. Why it's almost half of the land. We will give to that two answers. The first one, let's say now, and the other later. The first one is quite practical. And it has two parts. It was Shevet Yehuda needed. Why it was what it needed? Because first of all, Shevet Yehuda was quite big. Many people. If we see later in the Tanakh also, we can see that Shevet Yehuda was almost half of Am Yisrael. There are some places where the Bible count or tell us about counting Am Yisrael, and then we can see that it counted Shevet Yehuda separately from the rest of Am Yisrael, and the numbers are quite close. It's not 1 of 12, for sure. In one place, if I'm not mistaken right now, it's around the number of Am Yisrael was about 1 million soldiers, and the tribe of Yehuda 600,000. I'm not remember exactly, but more or less, we are talking about almost half of Am Yisrael. So it was a quite big tribe, so it needed quite big Nachala, land. The second answer that you can see is that most of this Nachala, most of this land is not a place where you can live. It's a desert. While we are going northern in the land of Israel, it's a very, very fertile land. The south is mostly desert, as we also can see today. Midbar Yehuda, Midbar Tzin, all these places are desert. So even though it's big, it's not a place where you can live. Okay, so this is we can say the practical answers is that it's not so big if you're talking about the places where you can actually live. And we will see an example for that in the stories that we have in this chapter. Okay, so this is the first answer. I have other answers which I'll tell you later. So let's see now, read the borders. The southern boundary began from the tip of the Dead Sea. Okay, you can see this is the tip of the Dead Sea, right? Here. From the tongue that project southward, just a second, it proceeds to the south of the ascent of Akrabim, Ma'ale Akrabim, passed on the Tzin, ascended to the south of Kadesh Barnea, passed on to Chetzron, ascended to Adar, and make a turn to Karka. So apparently it's describing more or less the green light that you can see here, the green line that you can see here. From there it passed on to Atzmon and proceed to the Valley of Egypt. Okay, you can see the Valley of Egypt here. So there are two opinions. What it's written here, it's Vadi El Arish, this opinion of Rav Ovadia Gaon. There are opinions that it's more south, even. To Valley of Egypt, and the boundary ran on to the sea. That shall be your southern boundary. Okay, this is all the southern boundary, quite far south, like we say. The boundary on the east was a Dead Sea up to the mouth of the Jordan. On the northern side, so here it's about from when we see the Dead Sea until where it's more or less Jerusalem. Basically, all the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea today is much smaller than what you see here in this map. It's getting dry. The boundary ascended to Bet Chogla and passed north of Bet Arava. Then the boundary ascended to the stone of Boham, son of Reuven. The boundary ascended from the valley of Achor to Dvir and turned north to Gilgal, facing to the ascent of Adumim, Ma'ale Adumim, what we call nowadays, facing that is south of the Vadi. From there, the boundary continued to the waters of En Shemesh and ran to En Rogel. So, okay, then the boundary ascended into the valley of Ben Hinnom along the southern flank of the Yevusim, that is Jerusalem. So the boundary of Yehuda passed through Jerusalem. Jerusalem, it's a very interesting story. It belongs to Shevet Yehuda or Binyamin or to no one. So there are three options here. Apparently, it was divided between Binyamin and Yehuda, and the Gemara say that part of it belongs to Yehuda, part of it to Binyamin. Another place it says that Yerushalayim lo nitchalka leshvatim, meaning it doesn't belong to any shevet, any tribe. It belongs to everybody. Yerushalayim is a general city of the land of Israel. Anyway, you can see that in the border between Binyamin and Yehuda. The boundaries run up to the top of the hill that flanks the valley of Hinnom, on the west, at the northern ends of the valley of Rephaim. From that hilltop, the boundary carved to the fountain of the waters of Nefota and ran on the towns of Mount Ephron. Then the boundary carved to Baala, to what? Baala, yeah, that is Kiryat Yearim. Kiryat Yearim, it's a place nowadays near Jerusalem. I'm not sure it's the same place in the Bible. From Baala, the boundary turned westward to Mount Seir, passed north to the slope of Mount Yearim, that is Cheslon, descended to Bet Shemesh and passed on to Timnah. So now we are in the western part of the north, and this is more or less the land of the Plishtim. The boundary then proceeded to the northern flank of Ekron. The boundary carved to Shikrona, passed on the Mount Baala and proceed to Yavniel, and the boundary ran to the sea. And the western boundary was the edge of the Mediterranean Sea. Those were the boundaries of the various clans of the Shevet Yehuda on all sides. Okay, so again, I cannot recognize each one of the places. There's a lot of work, of scientific work, of recognize all these places. And there are some different opinions about different places. It's a lot of archaeology, etc. I can't tell you because I don't know the details of all these places, but we can see, like I said before, that it's almost half of the land of Israel belongs to the tribe of Yehuda. And we gave one explanation why. Now we continue to the first story. So the first story we already seen. in accordance with God's comments to Yehoshua, Caleb, son of Yefuneh, was given a portion among the Bnei Yehuda, namely Kiryat Arba, that is Hebron. Arba was the father of Anak. Anak, we say giant. He was the father of the giant, and we explained all this story in the last class. Caleb dislodged from there the three Anakim, Sheshai, Achiman, and Talmai, descendants of Anak. So Caleb can take the city by himself? Apparently no. Apparently he had an army from the tribe of Yehuda, and he took the city of Hebron. So we understand that he is strong, he is capable, and he can conquer cities, very, very strong cities with giants. And then we see that he tried to do another move like that. From there, he marched against the inhabitants of Dvir. The name of Dvir was formerly Kiryat Sefer. And Caleb announced, I will give my daughter Achsa in marriage to the men who attack and capture Kiryat Sefer. Why couldn't Caleb do that by himself? We just see that he took Hebron. Why cannot take Kiryat Sefer? Why Kiryat Sefer has two names, Dvir and Kiryat Sefer? Kiryat Sefer, how would you translate it? The city of the book. What book? You can guess, maybe it's a Torah. Okay, anyway, Caleb say, I cannot do that by myself. It looks like he cannot do, he could take Hebron, he cannot take Kiryat Sefer for some reason. So he promised his daughter. So, promise a daughter to unknown person. If you take a city, it's like invitation to troubles. Who are going to take cities? People that like fights, right? That's, I don't know, strong. There is interesting saying in the Talmud about people that ask things improperly and they had luck and got a good answer. One of them is this case. For example, who else do you know that says something that conditions that was inappropriate? Maybe the most famous Yitzchak. I mean Eliezer for Yitzchak. Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, said, the woman that would give me water and to my camels would marry Yitzchak. And if she would, I mean, it's a good test to see that she's a good person, but maybe she's from a bad family. Maybe she's, it's called the Gemara, maybe one mamzer bastard, or maybe some blind girl or someone, I don't know, nothing against the blind, but what I'm trying to say, you don't know who's going to come. Maybe she's good in helping people, but she's also a murderer. Who knows it's going to be? So you are doing these conditions based on what? Another example that the Gemara says, we have similar case. Shaul says, the one who will beat Goliath will marry my daughter. And so the Gemara says the same, and maybe it's going to be some unlegal person. How do you say a bastard? Bastard, right? It's a person that was born from unlegal marriage. So you cannot marry a bastard according to the halakha. So how can you do this kind of conditions? So it's interesting that one of the cases that mentioned in the Talmud about, or in the Midrashim, about the person that did inappropriate condition, but was answered well by God, is Caleb. But in other place, it mentioned other cases, but it didn't mention Caleb. Okay, so this is the first question. Now, who is going to answer to this question? Is kinsman, what is kinsman? Brother? Family. So what it says is brother in the Hebrew. Vayikeda Otniel ben Knaz achi Caleb. So his kinsman Otniel the Kenizit captured it. So according to what it's written here, it says Otniel ben Knaz, son of Knaz, the brother of Caleb. What was the name of Caleb? Caleb ben Yefuneh, and Otniel ben Knaz. Caleb is the son of Yefuneh, Otniel is the son of Knaz, and they are brothers. How it can be? Well, it can be easy by mother, right? That there was the same mother, but not the same father. But in other places, many times, Caleb is mentioned as Caleb ben Yefuneh Akenizi, from the family of Knaz. So, other solutions that we can give to that it's not son of Knaz. It can be the son that came from the family of Knaz. Like we said, Bnei Yehuda, the sons of Yehuda, or Bnei Israel, the sons of Israel. Not everybody is a direct son of Israel. We are talking about son of Israel. So it's all called son of Israel. So maybe Knaz was like the clan, you say, about the big family, and the father was Yefuneh. Other options that Yefuneh is not the real name of the father, because we know there are some cases when we add different names for the same person in the Tanakh. So maybe Caleb and Yefuneh, it's not. Chachamim say some midrashim about the names. The Yefuneh meaning lefanot, to clear the place. So it wasn't really the name of the father. Anyway, the one who answered to the challenge is the brother of Caleb. Is it allowed to marry your nephew? Nephew, you say? Niece. She is his niece. Is it allowed to marry your niece? And your uncle? Your aunt?
No.
No, that's right. So the halakha says that one can marry the son of the daughter of his brother, but you cannot get married with your aunt, meaning you cannot marry the son of your brother if you're a woman, right? So it's allowed. It's not a problem. It's allowed. And Othniel ben Knaz answers this challenge and took her as a wife. And then the story continues with strange things. When she came to him, she induced him. What is induced? Convinced?
Yeah.
Caused him. So the word in Hebrew is tasiteu. Tasiteu meaning when you are convincing someone to do something bad.
Yeah.
Inappropriate. Leasit is to make someone make a sin. That's in Hebrew. Masit umediach. The Torah speaks about masit umediach, someone that convinced other people to do idolatry, to do avodah zarah. So the Tanakh used the word vatesiteu. She induced him to ask her father for some property. She dismounted from her donkey, and Caleb asked her, "What is the matter?" So dismounted meaning falling, got off. So the word in Hebrew is titznach. Titznach, when we go from airplane to the land, we say litznoach. This is in modern Hebrew, but litznoach, it's like falling when you are losing your conscience. Litalef, how do you say litalef? What this? When you are losing your conscience, you are falling down like that. Fainting. Yeah. Okay. So she's making a lot. The old show there. She's falling from the donkey. She cannot stand on the donkey. And Caleb asked her, "What's the matter? What are you doing me here shows?" She replied, "Give me a present. For you have given me away as Negev land. Negev means dry land. So give me springs of water." And he gave her upper and lower gulot. Gulot meaning springs. This was the portion of the tribe of Yehuda by their clans. Okay, so all this story is quite strange. And like I asked before, what is the reason that Caleb cannot take Kiryat Sefer by himself? Why does he ask for help? He could take Hebron. And what is the meaning of promising his daughter to the people, to the person who's going to? So we know some similar cases. There were some similar cases where someone was promised with the daughter of the king, like we said before, Goliath, etc. I can suggest explanations that I read that it was the other way. What does it mean? We said, what is the problem that we want to resolve, that Caleb wants to resolve? It's hard to take a dvir. This is the problem we want to resolve. What is the solution? We'll ask who can do that. Okay, this is the normal way to read it. But what is the other way? I mean, the problem is, how can I find someone good enough to marry my daughter? Or maybe to be the leader. And the solution is to give a challenge. Meaning, maybe Caleb could do that by himself. He could take Kiryat Sefer. As we said before, he was strong. He says, "Kekochi az, kochi ata." I'm strong now as I was before. It wasn't a problem of Caleb not able to do that. The difference is, I mean, the real problem was he wanted to find who can be after him. And here I want to return to something that we said before. Caleb spoke with Yehoshua in the former chapter, and it sounds like a little bit criticizing Yehoshua. And we mentioned two things that Yehoshua can be criticized for. I mean, if there are reasons, we gave reasons why he did that. If it's justified or not justified, we can speak about it. But there are two general things that Yehoshua was criticized for. First of all, if you remember, he wasn't very determined, very firm in taking the land. I mean, he did the wars, but he didn't hurry in habitat. I mean, to actually bring the people live in the country. He did that very, very slowly. And we talked about why, but this is one of the things that he was criticized for. The second thing that he didn't have any son. He didn't have son, he didn't have her, not only son, physical son, he didn't have someone that would be in his place. Right? We don't have any leader after Yehoshua that was named by Yehoshua. Yehoshua was named by Moshe. He didn't name anyone to replace him. And Caleb is doing exactly these things. Caleb is the one who is rushing to get inside the land. I want to take the land. I want to live in the place I was promised. I want to take Sefer. So Caleb, and we will see that it's general, the attitude of Shevet Yehuda, are very active in taking the land. It's not only, well, we want to do the things in our rhythm, slowly, step by step. No, I want to do everything as fast as I can. I have this order, this mitzvah, to live in the land of Israel, and I will do my best in order to fulfill it as soon as possible. So this is something that Caleb was doing, not like Yehoshua. And the second, that he wanted someone that would replace him. Meaning, Caleb is the leader of the Shevet Yehuda, he's the president of the tribe of Yehuda, and he wanted to be someone in his place after he was gone. Did it succeed? Yes, we will read in the beginning of Sefer Shoftim, who was the first judge. We know that after Yehoshua, we have the time of the judge, Shoftim. Shofet is not judge in the court. Shofet in the Tanakh is like a king, he's a leader. We will see that at Hashem, Sefer Shoftim. So, who was the first Shofet, the first judge after Yehoshua? We can see in chapter 3 or 4 that it was Otniel ben Knaz. Otniel ben Knaz was the first one in the list of the Shoftim in Sefer Shoftim. So we can say that it was other way. Caleb could take Kriyat Sefer, but he wanted to find someone appropriate to do that. For sure, he didn't did like a general bid, who's going to take that? Right? He didn't ask everyone in the street. It was among the leaders, the potential leaders of Shevet Yehuda. One of them was his little brother, Otniel ben Knaz. And he was the right person that took this place. And then he's going to be the leader. But here come the woman, Achsa. She's not just, and I would add that, like we said many times, at least once, in the former classes, marriage between kings, leaders, judge, it's not just a love story. It's also a political move. Marrying the daughter of the king, meaning being his replacement, being the one who would replace him. We can return to the story of Yehoshua, of David and Shaul. You remember the story, it's in Sefer Shmuel. There is a big challenge. Goliath is challenging Am Israel. No one can go against Goliath. What Shaul does? Shaul does, it's the same thing. He says, the one who would beat Goliath, I'm going to make him rich, and I'm going to give him my daughter. What does it mean to give him his daughter? That he is a potential replacement, at least be part of the royal house, even though it's not going to be the king, because Shaul hoped that it's going to be Jonathan, his son. But David is into the family of the king, so he's going to be one of the leaders of Am Israel. After a while, Shaul understood the mistake. Why? Because Shaul wasn't only entering the family, he was becoming the candidate to be the one after Shaul. Okay, so then he started to hate him. But clearly offering to marry the daughter of the leader, meaning be one potential leader after that. So this is the meaning of this wedding, of this marriage. Okay, it's not like I want you to fall in love with my daughter. Maybe I hope you fall in love with her, but it's not the main issue here. And then she's asking for water. we will see that all this story has other explanation according to the Midrash, but now we are sticking with the literal meaning. So she said, and we can see that here what we said before, that most of the places in the tribe of, in the Nachala of Shevet Yehuda, of the tribe of Yehuda, are bad places to live. There's no water there. And she said, if you want him to be a leader, it's not only taking the city and marry the daughter of the former leader. It's also you need economical resources. We cannot establish the main city, the city of the leader, in a place where there's no water. So maybe, unfortunately, in the past, they listen less to the women. So she has to do all this trick, all this falling from the donkey and all this story to take his attention. And once he has attention, then he give her what she needed in order to develop this kingdom. We have now like different kingdom. Each tribe is quite independent. And then we have also all of Israel together, but each tribe has to take care of himself. The leader of the tribe of Yehuda is going to be Otniel ben Knaz. You gave him a city without water, he cannot be a leader like that. Okay, so after making this action of falling from the donkey, Kalev, you have my attention. Okay, I need the resources in order to be able to establish this this place.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You said that the judge is Shofet, is a leader.
Yeah.
So is Shofet and Melech
The same, yeah,
same position?
more or less. We'll talk about it, Bezrat Hashem, in the beginning of Sefer Shoftim,
Yeah.
but I would say something. It's also the other way. The king in the old days were also a judge. Many things that were discussion between people about lands, about everything, came in front of the king. We can see that in Mishpat Shlomo, the sentence of Shlomo, if you remember, with the two women, with the king, with the kid that he said to cut him.
Yeah.
Why did they come to the king? Didn't they go to the judge? No, the king was a judge. He was the one who was judging the people. But from the other side, we will see that the judge was a king. The judge was what we call shofet in Sefer Shoftim. It's not necessarily the one who was sitting and deciding who owned to who $100. It's not the judge. The judge was shofet Israel, was leading Am Israel in the challenges that they had in this time. Okay, but it's a topic for the beginning of Sefer Shoftim, Bezrat Hashem. So all this we can understand now according to this explanation. It's a possible, I'm not saying that it's only explanation that can be, but it's a nice explanation that I think this is the story, all the story about. All the story about is about finding someone, establishing the kingdom of Yehuda in this place, and finding who's going to be the leader after Kalev and Yefuneh, who's going to be the hero. But there is another story that Chachamim said, and they are connected it to the this name Kiryat Sefer, the city of the book. Which Sefer? We have one book, Sefer Torah, the book of the Torah. And Chachamim said, and it's something I want to add something before saying that, many times we see leaders in the Tanakh that when we see the Midrashim, when we see the explanation in the Gemara, in the Midrashim, we can see that it wasn't only a military leader, he also was a spiritual leader. He was a big Talmid Chacham. We can see that Yehoshua is not only the one who conquers the land of Israel, it's also the student of Moshe Rabbeinu, who learned Torah from Moshe Rabbeinu. We see that David HaMelech is not only the king, he also wrote the Sefer of Tehillim, right? That the prayer of Hashem, but he also was Talmid Chacham in the Talmud. There's many stories about the things that David said or taught or was taught. I mean, he was not only the king, the warrior, the leader, he was also Talmid Chacham. And there is a special combination between physical power and spiritual power. The ability to lead a war and to do amazing things as a leader of Am Israel, and to be totally devoted to learning Torah and to be a big Talmid Chacham. It looks like, in first glance, look like a strange combination, but it's the right combination. We should find leaders that can do the two rules, the rules of the spiritual leader and the physical, the political leader. And one of these are exactly this Otniel ben Knaz. So according to the Midrash, they say that there were 3,000 halachot that when Moshe passed away, they were forgotten from Am Israel. So there are teaching of Moshe Rabbeinu in the days of mourning for Moshe Rabbeinu were forgotten, and they didn't know the halacha. And according to that, what is Kiryat Sefer, concurring the Kiryat Sefer, is to find the solution for this halachot. And who was the one who could find the solution, and how did he find the solution? That Mara said, the Midrash said, it used the word בפלפולו. והחזירן עתניאל בן כנז בפלפולו. Meaning by his wisdom, by his ability to conclude things unwritten from the things that are written, what we call Torah שבעל פה, meaning it's written a verse, and you can find the idea of the verse, and by that find the solution or the answer to other question. It's called בפלפולו, by his wisdom, by his ability to analyze the Torah, the teachings of the Torah. He could conclude or exclude the new halachot, the halachot that were forgotten. So according to that, Otniel ben Knaz was a big Talmid Chacham. He was the one who could continue the teaching of Moshe Rabbeinu. It wasn't only the one who could take the city. He could take the city of the book, meaning he could, by his wisdom, teach Torah, even things that we don't have the answer. Moshe Rabbeinu taught several things, or certain things. We know what he taught, maybe we forgot, maybe we didn't, never mind. Now there are new situations, new cases, new answers, new questions. Someone asked me about, it wasn't a practical question, it's just theoretical. They wanted to know, is it allowed to give or to receive donations of eggs to have babies, if the woman can take a donation of egg to make baby? And if the egg belongs to a non-Jew woman, is the baby is going to be a Jew or not? It's an interesting question. And then she said, yeah, but how can the rabbi answer this question? It wasn't before. There was never a situation like that before. It's a modern question. So how can we conclude something from the Torah? So I don't know the answer to these specific questions, but it's interesting to see that other questions like that, similar like that, for example, donation of sperm, is it allowed or not allowed? Or we talked about in the evening of Shavuot about donation of organs. Is it something that it's allowed or not allowed according to the halacha? So how can we answer modern questions if we Chachamim didn't have this situation? And it's interesting to see that the rabbis of our generation, the big rabbis, can find similar situation or conclude principles that can answer the new question from the old things, from the old written or text that we already have. If we take, for example, the donation of organs, you say? Organs, yeah. So the question there is, for example, when you decide that the person has died, you cannot take organs from someone who is alive, because you're not allowed to kill anyone to save the life of someone else, even though that this person is almost died. If he's not dead, you cannot take his organs.
If you take an organ from a person who wants to donate one who's alive.
Yeah, if it doesn't kill him.
Yeah.
But if I tell you, take my heart, I give it to you. No, you cannot, because you cannot kill someone to save someone else. Again, I repeat, even if this someone is going to die in 5 minutes, you cannot take his heart. So the question here is, when is the moment of the death? When we can decide, if there's a moment that we can decide that the person has died, but his organs are still usable. You can still use his organ, because if you're waiting 2 days, sometimes even 3 hours, you cannot use anything anymore. But there's a point when you still can use the organs, but the person is considered dead. This is the halachic question, or the moral question. If it's not halacha, the moral question, I believe that also other people that are not Jews would say the same. I cannot take organs from a live person to put in a dead person, but the question is when it is died. So the halacha speaks about that. Yes, we can find sugiyot, meaning text on the Talmud, that speaks about when exactly the person is died. The question there in the Talmud is someone is house fall on him, so you have to save his life. But you don't know if he's alive or not alive. Can you do that on Shabbat? Yes, because you're not sure. He's alive or not alive. So you can do that even in Shabbat, but once you find him, if you find that he is dead, you cannot continue. But when can we consider him as a dead? So the Talmud ask about if you should be according to the breath, according to the heart. So there are discussion. From this discussion, we can conclude what would be the halacha in the case of donation of organs. What I'm trying to say, this is calling the pilpulo, meaning taking from the written text or from the known knowledge, from the things that we already know, and find the principles that can help you answer new questions and fit the Torah with the new reality. It's not changing the Torah. It's taking the same principles of the Torah and using them in the same situation. So this was Otniel ben Knaz. And it's very appropriate that he would be the first leader after the time of Yehoshua and Moshe. We said many times that Yehoshua, in many meaning, is continuing the days of Moshe Rabbeinu. He's changing some of the things, and he continues some of the things. Now we have the new situation. The situation is now not in the desert. We are not in the desert anymore. We are not taking the country by war anymore. We actually live in the country. It's a new situation. In this new situation, we need a new leader that would be able to guide us in the new situation. It's a new reality. So this is exactly Kalev Otniel ben Knaz. So, for example, this story about the springs, about the water, there is gulot iliot, the elevated water, and there are gulot tachtiyot, inferior, you say? I would translate it here. Upper and lower gulot, upper and lower springs. So, for example, there is explanation of Rav Kook that say that upper are the things that were given to us, and lower those are we can conclude from ourselves. So she asked both kind of gulot. Other explanation says that again, Achsa is the realistic, pragmatical woman. So her husband, learning the yeshiva, is very busy in learning halachot and answer questions, etc., etc. But she said, you also need water. You also need things in order to be able to live. So there is a combination of the upper, meaning the Torah, and the lower, meaning the material. She's the one who unites these two things. That's why you have to get married. Not only looking on you, everybody, right? It's combination of the two things, of the spring of superior, I mean the spiritual life, and the spring and the gulot, the springs of the inferior life. Okay, so this is maybe one of the explanations of this story. Okay, so like I said before, we have the last part of the chapter. It's a list, a very, very long list with many, many cities. It's interesting to those who are learning about the archaeology of the land of Israel. I can tell you where each one of these cities is. I only want to talk about the amount, and we leave the answer to the next class, B'ezrat Hashem. We can see that the tribe, the Nachalat of Shevet Yehuda, of the tribe of Yehuda, is very diverse. Many different kinds of places. The mountains, the desert, near the sea, near the other sea, norther. It's a very, very diverse. And it's divided to 14 areas, provincias. We can see that it's divided to 14 provincias. Two of these provincias, Yehuda couldn't take. One of them is Yerushalayim, the other is Gaza. It's interesting, these two places, Gaza and Jerusalem. And anyway, it's turned out to be how much? 12. 12 provincias can be very similar to 12 tribes. So in some meaning, Yehuda has the same as all Am Yisrael together. We can see that also it's interesting, if you counting the number of the cities, you would get 112, which is exactly the number of the cities that are mentioned about the other tribes. The other 6 tribes that we're going to see later, not Menashe and Ephraim, that it's a separate story. There are another 7 tribes that would receive the Nachala in the 3rd stage. We say there are 3 stages. So these 7 tribes, one of them is Dan. Dan didn't get any city. some of the cities that are mentioned in Yehuda are also belongs to Dan, and he also went to the north to get another Nachala. You can see that Dan is here, but also here. So the story of Dan, we will see in the next chapters. So if we take in out Dan and we take in Menashe and Ephraim, the tribes of Yehuda, the tribe of Yehuda received the same number of cities as the rest 6 tribes that are in the western part of the land of Israel. So Yehuda in some way reflecting all the other tribes of Israel. And it's something that we can see during the Bible in many, many meanings, that always it's Yehuda and Israel. Later, it would become also the kingdom of Yehuda in the south and the kingdom of Israel on the north. And it's interesting that the kingdom of Israel disappeared and the tribe of the north disappeared. So what left was only the tribe of Yehuda that is in some way reflecting Olam Israel. Olam Israel stayed or lived through Yehuda. So we have to understand the story of Yehuda, but that's why we leave it to the next class, Bezrat Hashem. Okay, any questions or comments?
Access to the Euphrates.
What?
Your border will be from the river of Egypt.
Yeah.
Green border of the Golden River.
Yes, this is the
As far as the river Euphrates. Euphrates is like way from here. Wow.
what? Freddy's? What verse are you reading?
Euphrates. On the map, it's from Genesis.
That so what? Yeah, this is the south. And what do you say about the
The
north?
river
Yes.
is in the north. Euphrates. They never conquered the Euphrates. Never went there.
Also says your border will be from south, that river.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's kind of free.
Ad Prat. Let me see. What verse is it?
Just Mauritius.
Yeah. Okay. But not the verse is not talking about the tribe of Judah. It's talking about all the land of Israel.
Right.
Yeah. But says they never arrived to there. Yes, that's what he's saying. They never arrived so far. Okay, I'm not sure. There were sometimes in the history that there was until there, more or less. Maybe the days of Yanai, the king Yanai. Maybe in the beginning, the tribe of Menashe arrived until there. It's not very clear until where did he arrive. Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, we didn't arrive there in this time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.